found that that approximately 4% of the EU population has ever been in one of these situations, has ever been homeless. Now, interesting is that the Fundamental Rights Agency of the European Union actually did the same kind of survey in their large LGBTQI survey that they did, I think last year, was it, Robbie, or the year before? And there, so they also asked the question about life prevalence of homelessness. Have you ever been homeless in your life? And they found that 1 in 5 LGBTQI people have ever been homeless, shelter, street, or sofa surfing. If you bring it down to trans people, it concerns 1 out of 3 people. And if you talk about intersex people, it's 1 out of 2. So if you compare to the 4% of the general population, you clearly see that the LGBTQI community is more vulnerable to the issue of homelessness. And it shows that it's important for us to focus on this issue. Just to end with the overview, we see a rapid increase in youth homelessness in most countries in the European Union. And we think that a substantial part of the increase of youth homelessness actually concerns the LGBTQI community. Hence our focus on youth amongst the LGBTI community. Now, very quickly, last year, we did a survey of our members of the homeless sector, of the homeless NGOs, on the LGBTQI issue. And we found, and I don't want to go into any great detail, but we found that most homeless NGOs, most homeless organizations are working with LGBTQI homeless people. But they report to us that they lack competences and they lack resources and political support to provide inclusive and empowering services for the LGBTQI homeless community. That's why, together with ILGA and the True Colours Foundations, we have started to develop trainings for the sector. And I don't want to reveal the conclusions of the report that will be presented in a minute, but one of the things that is clear is that there is plenty of scope to further cooperate together on the issue. And I would like to end with 2 words about the EU context, the EU policy context. Of course, when I talk about numbers, the situation is quite dire, you know, because homelessness is increasing. But the policy context at EU level is quite favorable at the moment. The Commission and the EBSCO Council, so that's the Ministers of Social Affairs, they have agreed to launch an EU homeless platform on the 21st of June. And that platform is nothing else than a tool that will be used to organize activities on homelessness at EU level. It's some kind of an EU strategy on homelessness, you could say. And there is plenty of opportunities that will come with the launch of this platform. And I'm sure that there will be also opportunity to continue working on LGBTQI youth homelessness or homelessness in general. So that's one thing that is important. And I think Commissioner Schmidt will refer to it in a minute. But the other thing that is important is that in the new LGBTQI strategy of the European Union that has been launched a couple of months ago by the European Commission, youth homelessness has actually been mentioned as an issue. So you see that we're starting to be successful in mainstreaming homelessness in sectoral policies. So we have both the platform and the LGBTQI strategy at EU level. That is a favorable context to get our cooperation going and impactful. And just while I'm speaking, because the issue gets picked up by the EU institutions, like the European Parliament has picked it up already in the report of Kim van Sparentak, who will speak later. There is already a request to the European Union to do something about LGBTQI homelessness. But today as well, the Economic and Social Committee, which brings together the social partners and the NGO sector in an official format, they're voting on a report on LGBTQI strategy at EU level, and also they call for more attention to the issue of LGBTQI homelessness. So I think that even if the reality on the ground is quite dire, the political context allows us, gives us the tools to address it in a more effective way. That's what I wanted to say in terms of introductory remarks. Leaves me to introduce the next speaker, which will be Commissioner Schmidt. He sent us a video message, but in this online world, the difference between a video message and actually being live present is not that big. Just allow me to present Nicolas Schmid. So he's the commissioner responsible for employment and social rights. He's actually the person that is the driving force behind this EU homeless platform. He is really personally committed to do something about homelessness in Europe and to make the European Union a useful level to support member states in their fight against homelessness. So his personal commitment is really quite impressive. And he will address us through a video message for a couple of minutes. So Nicolas Schmid, the floor is yours.
Let me start by congratulating you for this insightful research work, shedding light on the realities of homelessness, which still remains largely hidden, even in plain sight. LGBTIQ people suffer from comparatively high rates of homelessness. They are estimated to represent between 25 and 40% of young homelessness. The report shows us that over half of the homelessness organizations worked with young LGBTIQ people. Being expelled from the family home and experiencing discrimination in access to housing are some of the main reasons for becoming homeless. LGBTIQ people also experience discrimination during recruitment and in the workplace. Many face barriers in finding fair and stable jobs. Equality and non-discrimination are enshrined in the EU founding treaties and are at the heart of the European project. These are values we need to defend and uphold. And I thank all the organizations that help give voice to the most vulnerable members of the LGBTIQ community. Your action is indispensable. The LGBTIQ equality strategy presented by the Commission strives to tackle violence and discrimination against LGBTIQ people. In this context, the Commission also promotes the use of the European Social Fund Plus to improve the socioeconomic position of the most marginalized LGBTIQ people. We will also gather evidence on the barriers to full equality and develop guidance for member states and businesses. Let me now specifically refer to the issue of homelessness. Homelessness has many causes. Addressing them requires the cooperation of many actors, including national and local authorities, service providers, housing organizations. To support enhanced cooperation in this field, the Commission is launching a European platform on combating homelessness, in close collaboration with the Portuguese presidency and the European network of national organizations working with the homeless, FEANTSA. The aim of the platform will be, first and foremost, to start a political dialogue between member states, the Commission, and stakeholders active in combating homelessness, and to create a framework for mutual learning so that innovative and successful policy measures can be shared and scaled up to make tangible progress. It will be a forum in which exchanges can put a focus on groups with specific needs, such as homeless LGBTIQ people. For example, your report points out that mainstream homeless services are not always prepared to respond to specific needs of homeless LGBTIQ youth. This is an issue that needs to be addressed in the context of the platform. I look forward to the future collaboration with your organizations in tackling discrimination and working towards ending homelessness.
Thank you. That was it for me. And I'll hand over to Gregory from True Colors Foundation and his colleagues for the presentation of the report. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Freek. Welcome. I'm Gregory Lewis. I'm the Executive Director of True Colors United. First, want to just say thank you to all of our partners. True Colors United is really honored to work with ILGA-Europe, FEANTSA, and the Silberman Center for Sexuality and Gender. Over the last 4 years, we've really been able to make some meaningful progress towards elevating the issue of LGBTQI youth homelessness, and look forward to the latest in those efforts kind of being shared in a moment and what will follow in our work to come. The data you're about to hear is from a series of reports we've done together over the last year to really understand the needs of homelessness providers and LGBTIQ organizations to address the issue of LGBTQI youth homelessness. This survey that we did of these organizations is exactly what we did in America in 2011 and 2015. And it really served as a way to elevate the issue and create a clear path forward, because we were actually hearing from the people working directly with LGBTQI young people about what they need to better serve those young people. And it really opened up conversations with leaders at the national, state, and local level here in the States, as well as with members of the community, to really get engaged and make this issue a priority, which in result shifted the focus and ended up now in America, we are centering LGBTIQ young people within the overall response to youth homelessness, which is a significant and massive shift from 8 years ago here in America, where rarely was LGBTIQ young people mentioned, and rarely were they focused on. And now they are at the heart of the solutions we're putting forward. And it led to various initiatives, including a large-scale LGBTIQ youth prevention pilot that we did in a couple of cities here in America in partnership with the US federal government. It's also led to other fundamental shifts at the government, at the federal level, at the state and local level. So this report is going to really lay out a roadmap for what we all need to do together next to actually end this problem, and make sure that no young person is experiencing homelessness, especially because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. So I'm going to turn this over to two amazing researchers who led the research effort for all of us, Dr. James Shelton and Anthony Ratosa.
Thank you so much, Gregory. Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Ratosa. My pronouns are he, him, his, or any pronoun said with respect, and I'm a social work intern at the Silberman Center for Sexuality and Gender. I just want to start with a quick acknowledgement. Thank you to survey respondents for making these reports possible, and thank you to our collaborators at ILGA-Europe, FEANTSA, True Colors United, and the Silberman School of Social Work at Hunter College. So I'll be presenting a glimpse of some of the information from two reports that we're launching today. So some key findings from a study by ILGA-Europe, which surveyed LGBTI-focused organizations in Europe and Central Asia, and then a report that compares that study with a previous FEANTSA study, which surveyed specifically homelessness service organizations in Europe, and both focus on the issue of LGBTIQ youth homelessness. So as I said, this first study of LGBTI-focused organizations captured responses from 71 organizations from 32 countries in Europe and Asia. And it's important to note here the countries that are missing representation in this report. we really want to highlight that their absence doesn't mean that, it doesn't imply that LGBTI youth aren't experiencing homelessness in these countries. It could be perhaps due to limitations of this survey, and we hope these reports will inspire more organizations to participate to expand the collective knowledge of global LGBTI youth homelessness in future surveys. So participating organizations in this survey reported serving diverse regions across Europe. Some organizations worked with multiple countries in their region, some with rural towns and villages. And you can see about a quarter of organizations reported working in large metropolitan cities and another quarter working in their entire country. Here we get a little bit more context around the political environment in which these organizations are working. The survey asks about policies targeting youth homelessness in residence countries. And on the left, we see in blue, over a third of organizations said that their country does not have policy directly addressing youth homelessness. And that number jumps to about 75% of respondents saying that their country's policies don't specifically include LGBTI youth experiencing homelessness. Additionally, the survey asked on the left here if their governments support programs targeting LGBTI youth homelessness, with over half reporting that their governments do not support these programs. And about half of respondents also reported that funders in their countries do not support LGBTI youth homelessness work. So respondents really reported many challenges in addressing LGBTI youth homelessness through this study, in addition to this lack of government support, lack of support from funders. The most frequently reported challenge was a lack of research and data, with 75% of respondents reporting this challenge. Here we have one response from the survey. It reads, the most difficult challenge is a political climate and a rising wave of homophobia and transphobia. In connection to the political situation, we are concerned with further actions of the government that can make the situation of transgender people in Poland even worse. While solving problems already affecting the community could only be possible with governmental, legal, financial, and infrastructural support. So I want to note also that the survey asked about challenges specific to working with trans and intersex individuals, and you can find more about those responses in the complete report. Now I'll share some findings from the comparative report of both surveys. So in addition to this previous survey of 71 LGBTI-focused organizations, the FEANTSA survey had responses from 64 homeless service organizations across 21 countries in Europe, with 64% of them saying that they work with LGBTIQ youth compared to 68% of the LGBTI-focused organizations. I do just also want to note that additional organizations were reached out to for these surveys. These numbers are low compared to other surveys. And again, we hope that this will inspire more participation in the future. Here we have a sample of demographic data collected by both surveys. The practice of demographic data collection varied across organizations and across type of organization. Not only did the type of data collected vary, but also the methods for collecting that data varied as well. Here we see that, yes, finally, organizations were asked to estimate what percentage of youth experiencing homelessness in their country are LGBTIQ, and 30% of the LGBTIQ organizations surveyed estimated that that number is between 10 and 20% of youth experiencing homelessness. Also important to note is that a substantial percentage of organizations from both surveys replied that they have no idea how many homeless youth are LGBTIQ, which points to this lack of data to fully understand the scale of the issue of LGBTIQ youth homelessness. And here we have one more response that highlights this point for us. It says, The field of LGBTIQ plus homelessness in this country is hardly elucidated. We only have glimpses, and that's definitely supported by these reports. So now I'll pass it on to Dr. Jayla Shelton for some recommendations for next steps.
Thanks, Anthony. Hey, everybody, thanks for being here. So the findings that Anthony presented were just a sliver of the information that's available in these reports. And the reports also include some direct quotes from participants that I think also help to sort of put more of a face onto the challenges and experiences of homeless service providers and LGBTI focused organizations in doing this work. So we hope that you'll have the opportunity to check out the reports and look not only at the numbers, but also at the actual words that folks are saying, because it's really, really important. So I want to say that these are some select recommendations based on these 3 studies, and that these were developed in close collaboration with representatives from FEANTSA and ILGA-Europe. I think it's important to note that the team at True Colors and the Silverman Center for Sexuality and Gender are based in the United States, and we've done a lot of work on this issue in the United States. And so we are super familiar with our context, but we're not as familiar with the EU context because that's not where we reside and work. So I just want to make it very clear that our partners at FEANTSA and ILGA-Europe really helped shape these opportunities for change based on the data. Okay, so one of these is to develop prevention strategies. So the results of these studies make it clear that some of the primary triggers of homelessness among LGBTIQ young people are family rejection and a lack of institutional supports and services. And these things can be prevented in some cases. Research and evidence has shown that early interventions work to prevent youth homelessness and prevent reoccurrence of homelessness in adulthood. And here's a quote from one of the study participants. Long story made short, 50% among LGBT youth, they are driven away by ultra-religious families from disadvantaged and ultra-homophobic backgrounds. Others lost their jobs in the pre-pandemic period. So another opportunity for change is to develop a systematic process of data collection. One of the reasons LGBTIQ youth homelessness is sometimes referred to as a hidden issue is because of the absence of systematic data about sexual orientation, gender identity, and sex characteristics. Notably missing from our report, we encourage organizations to include sex characteristics on intake forms and in future surveys to more accurately record the diversity of intersex experiences. Collecting data on sex characteristics can lead to anti-discrimination legislation that protects the rights of intersex people. And so that is also essential to this work. Understandably, regional context and security must also be taken into account when developing processes of systematic data collection. One way to work on this is to have organizational representatives and young people to work together to inform resources and guidance for collecting this information. Ideally, governments can incorporate these systematic data collection efforts into existing surveys and data systems. LGBTIQ organizations can advocate for the inclusions of these items and can provide technical assistance to governments as they work to incorporate sexual orientation, gender identity, and sex characteristics into data collection efforts. In the absence of government support for systematic data collection of this information, LGBTIQ organizations can work alongside other systems like public welfare, housing, homeless services, healthcare, and education, for example, to include relevant items in their data collection efforts. The European Commission, with the support of FRA, can play a role by collecting data on the specific issues faced by service providers in this area, with the view of providing policy recommendations and exchange of good practices among member states. One other area for growth is training and capacity building. So one really clear takeaway from this research is the lack of shared knowledge. There is a lot of knowledge and expertise. Homeless services are experts on homelessness and housing solutions, but they may lack the knowledge and expertise to meet the specific needs of LGBTIQ experiencing homelessness with their experiences of homophobia, transphobia, interphobia, and the trauma of family rejection. At the same time, LGBTIQ services are experts in this topic, but may lack the knowledge and expertise about housing solutions and how to create sustainable exits from homelessness. So really focusing on opportunities for cross-sector collaboration would be one opportunity for change. The opportunity exists for sharing knowledge across the homelessness and LGBTIQ sectors in a way that would be beneficial to all. And a governmental role in this process could be to create a policy framework at the national level around LGBTIQ youth homelessness. The research makes clear the added value of EU leadership on LGBTIQ youth homelessness. As Anthony mentioned, 39% of respondents noted that there are no national policies in their countries around youth homelessness, and 72% noted that there were no national policies on LGBTIQ youth homelessness. And 59% reported a lack of funding available for this work. So one of the primary challenges that services face is additional funding opportunities to target LGBTIQ youth homelessness and comprehensive policies to help support that work. So there's a rich opportunity for cross-sector collaboration among homo services, LGBTI-focused organizations, and the government. So you can check out the full reports for more information. There are 3 in this series so far. And I hope that you will be able to do that. So thank you so much for listening to us today. And I will now stop sharing my screen.
And thank you very much, Gemma, and Anthony for this presentation. So my turn to introduce myself. I'm Evelyne Paradis, I'm the director of ILGA-Europe. And it's my turn also to thank wholeheartedly our partners in crime, FEANTSA and True Colors United, and a special thanks to the crew at True Colors United who just presented the reports. It's a rare thing where you find genuine partners who come in with simply wanting to share the body of knowledge and experiences that they have developed for the purpose of, supporting others to move forward. So thank you very much for a few years back having reached out to ILGA-Europe and FEANTSA and to embark on this journey that is only, going forward. So, in the civil society, it's been a coalition. It's been a joint work. But as Freek mentioned earlier, it's also important that at the political level, our sectors come together. So we heard the voice of Commissioner Schmidt earlier. And it's a very positive sign that we also have the voice of Commissioner Elena Dalli today, Commissioner for Equality, to give her remarks and comments on the reports that we're launching. So bringing the different policy angles from the European Union together. So again, it's a virtual video message that was sent by Commissioner Dalli that we're gonna let you hear now.
Good afternoon. According to the Fundamental Rights Agency, as many as 1 in 5 LGBTIQ persons have experienced homelessness. The percentage of affected LGBTIQ youth today, as was reported by ILGA-Europe and FEANTSA following last year's first pandemic lockdowns, could be as much as twice this, reaching up to 40%. These statistics alone are a call for urgent action. I therefore thank ILGA-Europe, FEANTSA and True Colors United for joining forces to tackle the scourge of LGBTIQ homelessness. I look forward to reading the report being launched entitled Perceptions, Findings from Homelessness Service Providers and LGBTI Organizations about LGBTIQ Youth Homelessness. The acute incidence of LGBTIQ homelessness is a growing concern, and your 2-year study will surely provide multiple pointers for action. It is crucial that we continue to study the different manifestations of LGBTIQ homelessness, fully identify their root causes, and draw the necessary policy solutions. Discrimination continues to affect LGBTIQ people at every stage in life. We have not reached the point where sexual and gender diversity are fully accepted as an integral part of our humanity. The impact of this stigmatization is huge and lifelong. From an early age, LGBTIQ children and youth, as well as children of rainbow families, are often discriminated. This affects their educational performance, self-confidence, and employment prospects. It also influences their personal and family well-being. Many LGBTIQ people continue to struggle with unemployment and underemployment. This discrimination and marginalization, even within the nuclear family, leads to a greater risk of homelessness. We have seen the exacerbation of the problem following the lockdowns over the past year that exposed several LGBTIQ people to unbearable situations in their own homes. Last November, I presented the Commission's LGBTIQ equality strategy, which strives to build a union of equality where diversity is celebrated. In it, we address homelessness directly while referring to your organization's material. I now look forward to the next steps in conjunction with you. I thank you for your efforts and wish you fruitful discussions.
So thank you very much to Commissioner Dalli for her words. I think it's very encouraging that we have two of the EU commissioners sending us very, very clear, positive messages of their willingness to dig into the subject deeper and to actually take action. And so that is actually the segue into the next part of our event, which is trying to look at what concretely we can do more of in the context of the European Union. And for this conversation, we've invited two of our colleagues and allies in the European Parliament, Kim van Sparentak, who is from the Greens group and has also been the rapporteur in the European Parliament report on access to decent and affordable housing for all. And Evin Insir from the Socialist and Democrat groups, but also a member of the LGBTI intergroup. So thank you both of you for joining us today. It's important to have the European Parliament represented and especially active MEPs on both the subject of housing, homelessness, and LGBTI. We know both of you are committed on all fronts because we also know that the European Parliament plays an important role in making sure that issues are kept on the agenda of the European Union. So I think just to get us started, you've listened to Gregory, Gemma, and Anthony. Also, you've had a chance to just hear the key messages. I'd like to hear what your main kind of first insights into these reports and what the data that we're coming through today, what are kind of things that are standing out for you. Maybe we start with Kim.
Yes, thank you very much. And also thank you so much for the invitation. And also thank you to ILGA-Europe, FEANTSA, True Colors United, and the Silberman School of Social Work for the great research that you have undertaken on this very important topic. It's an important topic, to raise awareness around the issue, and I also think that it could be also an important step towards having even better and stronger collaboration also on the ground. I think when you look at what is coming out of the report. And also what is happening in Europe, the topic is increasing in getting awareness. Also the fact that both Commissioner Schmid and Commissioner Dalli have participated in this event, it gives a bit of hope to us all. As the rapporteur of the Decent and Affordable Housing Report of the European Parliament, I have really fought to ensure that, you know, the mentioning of tackling LGBTIQ youth homelessness was part of it. And we asked for action at the EU level in the report. It demands action of the European Commission, specifically in 3 areas. To create tools for enhanced data collection. Well, I think you've already contributed to that also partially, but you know, it's really important that the Commission steps up into having good data collection that is also, you know, accumulated on a European level, to foster more research across the EU as well, and to facilitate the exchange of approaches to tackling the problem of LGBTIQ homelessness between member states. One of the things that we very often see is that, you know, the causes of homelessness are very complex, and this is just one of the group that perhaps doesn't fit into the stereotypical image society and policymakers tend to have of a homeless person, and you know that makes it perhaps even harder to fight for their rights. But I think also, you know, it's more and more being acknowledged that homelessness isn't a fact of life. It's not something that can't be tackled. It's actually a choice to decide whether you want to tackle homelessness or not. We are fighting very hard now also towards the Porto Summit to ensure, you know, that as a European Union, we decide that we don't want anyone to be homeless anymore as soon as possible, preferably by 2030. That's why we're pushing for an EU goal to end homelessness by 2030. And I think that is one of the things that is very important for all homeless people, but especially when you look at the horrible numbers, actually, when we're seeing how big, you know, the amount of LGBTIQ people is as a part of the homelessness community. I think it's very important that we fight for this.
Unmuting. Thank you, Kim, for your first reactions. Evin, what has been your first thoughts upon looking at the results and hearing about the results of the reports?
First of all, thank you very much from my side also for inviting us and for having us taking part in this conversation. It is evident, of course, that the situation is very serious, and it is also evident that we should have done a lot more, a lot earlier. But I am nevertheless happy that the Commission is taking the rights of the LGBTI, both youngsters, but LGBTI community and people in general, seriously, in the sense of we have now an LGBTIQ strategy in place. We have a gender equality strategy also, which I was in charge as the rapporteur for within the committee of LIBE, the Committee of Justice and Justice, Liberty and Home Affairs, sorry. And that gender equality strategy also have an intersectional perspective, which I think is very much important. But to hold ourselves to the topic in regards to homelessness and housing, I am happy to hear the declaration from the Commissioner for Social Rights, Nicholas Smith, to end homelessness in Europe, and that he also sees that homelessness is actually affecting some groups more than others, even though, of course, we need to eliminate homelessness as a thing in general, but we need to address and we need to make sure that those groups that are more hit are also getting more support. And that includes, what I think some of the other speakers said, it includes comprehensive policies, political policies, and not that we only talk, but we also put them in practice, because in the short time that I've been in the European Parliament, and I say short time because it's barely 2 years, and I sometimes feel that, okay, it should go faster, we should do more. So I'm hoping at least that more will happen very soon, but there should be comprehensive policies, and those policies that we have been adopted, many of them has already been mentioned, should and must be put in practice. Then we need the financial support, of course, to, for example, NGOs that are working with LGBTI youngsters and the community, so that they also could could get support for the work when it comes to homelessness, but also the competence that is needed on the field. And then, of course, also spread awareness, which I think there is very much a lack of. One part of it is also shown in that there is still, even though we have some data which are serious and showing, indicating on how serious the situation is, there is still lack of comprehensive data, which we, of course, need to put in place, because with data, we can also point out and say, look, the situation is maybe, we are all, I think, very much sure of that situation is even maybe worse than we are thinking that it is, that LGBTI people are being constantly hit because of different reasons. I mean, the pandemic really showed us that pandemic hit everybody, but it also showed us that vulnerable groups are hit by crisis even harder. LGBTI community who were people who were forced to stay at home with their parents that might be homophobic, transphobic, and so on, are living under, if they are still living at home, are living under threat constantly, being hit by violence constantly, and many also are being thrown out of home, and being then on the top of it discriminated in the labor market, in the education field, and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of challenges, and homelessness is a very concrete example of how serious the situation is. And if you don't have a shelter over your head, there are many things that becomes even harder to succeed with in life. But I think all of this is very much linked to each other. What is happening on the housing market with what is happening on the labor market, and so on. So my first and spontaneous reaction would be we have big challenges that we need to address yesterday.
But it already sounds like, in addition to the two commissioners, we have two very strong, passionate people in the European Parliament to carry the conversation. I'm going to push the two of you a little bit in terms of, do you have any very concrete ideas in terms of, now we're doing this event, and I think you can count on FEANTSA and ILGA-Europe, and of course we have the backup of True Colors United, to take very concrete steps in the months to come in the EU context to progress this conversation from where you're standing in your different committees and different roles in the European Parliament. What could we be looking at to really make sure that we follow through on the report and on the public commitments that we got from the commissioners? Evian, you want to start?
Okay, thank you. I think one important legislation that needs to be put in place, and it needs to stop being kidnapped a bit, maybe it's a harsh word, by the Council, it is the Horizontal Anti-Discrimination Directive. Because it is, the Horizontal Anti-Discrimination Directive is not only, as we have today, legislation, anti-discrimination legislation on the labor market, but it also sees all fields of society. That is one concrete legislation I would like to be unblocked by the Council. And then I also think, as a second thing also, that we need to increase our support for the LGBTI community, especially as we see a backlash when it comes to democracy and human rights in many countries. And we also see shrinking space when it comes to the NGO organizations, and that they are getting less, both political, financial, and being many times also in some countries prohibited to exercise or to conduct the work that the aim of the organization is doing. And women and LGBTI organizations are among those that are being hit hardest.
Thank you. Kim.
Well, I completely agree with Evan on these priorities for sure. We see that LGBTIQ rights are under pressure in many countries. And of course, we have recently declared the EU an LGBTIQ freedom zone, which I think was a very important first symbolic gesture. But we need the Commission to act and, also start, for example, infringement procedures against member states such as Poland and Hungary, where politicians and organizations are actively trying to set back LGBTIQ rights. But also when we're talking about housing specifically, You know, we see that a lot of people, you know, can't afford, especially young people already can't afford a house. But even if you can actually afford a house in this current housing crisis, when you're a member of the LGBTIQ community, it can be really hard to get a house because people are being discriminated against. And that's indeed why this horizontal anti-discrimination directive really has to change or has to be unblocked in the council. But I think one other thing that I would really like to address is this platform to combat homelessness, which Freek already mentioned in the beginning. I think this platform, you know, it's a very good start. We need to collaborate more on tackling homelessness. We have to ensure that we talk about it, you know, and that we monitor, you know, what is happening in different EU countries, and that we, you know, work together to end homelessness. But we also really have to make sure, you know, that we need to, a dedicated budget for it. And we have to make sure that the stakeholders are very strongly involved. And hopefully the Commission will really commit to this and make sure that as many people are on board in the coming years to really end homelessness in the EU.
I'm going to put a suggestion to both of you in terms of concrete, because I also think within the LGBTI sector, we have a lot of work to do in terms of raising awareness about the issue. It's not big enough on our own agenda. So maybe also from the perspective of the LGBTI intergroup, we could also start organizing a few meetings to really make sure that more of the LGBTI intergroup is also engaged on this issue and then able to partner with those working on housing and become a bit more vocal on this. It ties into a broader question I wanted to ask you, in the sense that I should have said that at the very beginning. I think ILGA-Europe engaged on the issue of homelessness a few years back when, well, thanks to the gentle nudge, I guess, of True Colors United. But it's been there, it's been on our agenda and on our radar for a few years, but it certainly, as everyone has named, it certainly became extraordinarily prominent in the last year, as, you know, all of the structural inequalities that we see in society have become so visible, and particularly impacting marginalized groups such as LGBTI communities. So, but I'm thinking that maybe the moment is also appropriate for us to start making more of the political case. So what is, from your respective political families and your respective country also and constituencies, what do you see as the opportunity to make the case for more attention being paid to adequate and decent housing, and also looking at marginalized groups like LGBTI communities? How do we start making the case as well? Kim, you want to go?
Yes, so, you know, having the right to be yourself is a human right, and having the right to a roof over your head is also a human right. And I think if we really start from a perspective of human dignity, and ensuring that, you know, we all acknowledge that that you should be able to live a free life with a roof over your head, it would be a really good start. And this means that we not only acknowledge it, but we also push it through in policy. So we don't have policies anymore that might jeopardize the health and well-being and the rights of LGBTQI people, but we also will have policies that will ensure that, you know, we don't enforce the housing crisis, but we really treat housing as the fundamental human right that it is. That we don't have, you know, policies anymore that will that put profit, making a profit over the right to housing. I think that would be already a very, very important start, that we have to make sure that we enforce that on all levels, because that is, I think, one of the clear things also that comes from this kind of research. We have to work together on all levels to make sure that LGBTQI people feel safe, that homelessness is being banned, that we solve the housing crisis, and especially that we make a case that, you know, these young people that are more vulnerable have the right to a positive upbringing and a positive life.
Thank you. Evine?
Well, I can also, of course, subscribe to what was just said. I think it's very much important to that housing is affordable. and that the housing market is regulated. It's of course, the social democrat right now in me talking, and I mean, if housing is not affordable, and we at the same time has discrimination on top of it, that means that a big part of the society, especially the marginalized groups, will be hit twice or 3 times harder than any other groups. So I think it's important with the regulation of the housing market. I see in my own country where we see a bit more and more of privatization, how it affects, of course, marginalized groups. It leads to, in some places, that the rents become super high, in some places even double. And imagine then if you are discriminated in the labor market also, you don't even have the money to have a decent and affordable housing, less do you have the money to have a housing than to a non-affordable price. And so, and when it comes to the momentum, or how we make sure to highlight and stress the importance of both housing and how it affects marginalized groups as the LGBTIQ community, I think the pandemic has very much showed us that we need to have solid welfare states, including a well-functioning, affordable housing market. So if we have any kind of momentum, we have the momentum right now. The pandemic has shown that we have many challenges, and without housing, you are even put in harder situation than if you would have been, and if you are already, with a house over your head or a roof over your head. So the momentum is right now, I would say.
Thank you both. We have a few questions in the Q&A section, so I'm gonna turn to Freek. Turning to your expertise on homelessness, as some of the questions I know you answered in writing, but would you mind just speaking to it for the benefits of all participants?
Yes, of course. Like, the questions are like, it's more comments than questions, I think, that I'm answering. It's people that express their frustrations about all the declarations, political declarations about ending homelessness and moving to progressing on homelessness without any concrete actions following from that. And I share that frustration. You know, I'm like you, Evelyn, we're long time in the European NGO business, and it takes time before you actually end up with concrete actions, but it shouldn't make us complacent. You know, like, the decision-making process at EU level is difficult, and we should be stubborn. I think it's the stubborn people that win at the end. And if I compare where homelessness was on the EU agenda 10 years or 15 years ago and where it is now, we have already made huge progress. And what I wrote in the answer in the chat is that I'm really hopeful that this EU homeless platform that Commissioner Schmidt has announced, and that he personally wants to be a success, together with the new LGBTQI strategy. Both initiatives will probably be resourced with EU money, that they will bring opportunities for concrete action, you know. So I don't want to be naive about it, but I think that if we continue joining forces through Colors United, ILGA-Europe, with our allies in the European Parliament, I think we can get things done. I think the European Commission is vulnerable to pressure, but you have to continue. Like, you have to not give up too easily, because I think to some extent the EU institutions, Council and Commission, count on people giving up. So I agree with the frustration, but let's not take that as a reason not to continue. That's my message.
Yeah. And I'll second, wholeheartedly second your message, because I think both of our sectors are in a position where this year we're seeing the fruits of EU advocacy, long time EU advocacy, coming to to fruition, in the sense that the LGBTIQ strategy is something that we have been advocating for nearly a decade, and now we have it, and the platform is there. So we are at a unique moment, and this is where it absolutely is crucial to have, you know, data emerging, because we're starting to be way more equipped to actually make the case and bringing all of the sectors together. So that is, you know, important. Yeah, Gregory.
Just want to add something. I know the US and the European context can be different at times and so forth, but we were in the same situation 10 years ago here in the States on this issue. And what we did was we got the data to prove the scope of the problem, as these reports are beginning to do for the first time. And then secondarily, we started doing smaller initiatives. And in our case, we had a supportive administration, federal government administration at the time. We were able to do smaller initiatives to build momentum together that allowed us to convince our Congress here to put financial investments and programmatic support behind actually engaging. So now we went from you know, the federal government spending $150 million a year on youth homelessness to now over $600 million a year on youth homelessness, and looking at new ways to prevent and end youth homelessness in the country. And that took a lot of work, a lot of patience, and working against a lot of stubborn people to get them to understand the scope of the problem. So I think the reports today are a good foundation from which to build. And fortunately, we have such strong leaders in ILGA-Europe and FEANTSA to move this forward in partnership with, and just wanted to give just a little bit of the context of what we went through here in the States, because we've been through it, and we're still working and we're still fighting.
Yes, and you kept going strong even without a very supportive administration. So that is also important for all of us to keep in mind as we move forward. I think there are a few other comments that I feel I just want to name that were exchanged in the chat. I think it's, again, people sharing experiences, but it's important elements. It's pointing to a comment in France, but it's pointing to also there are layers of intersectionality that definitely need to be explored further as we, you know, develop more data, because there is I guess experiential evidence that, you know, LGBTI youth coming from underdocumented migrant background or are different racialized community are even more vulnerable within the LGBTI youth sector. And it's also, I think there's points about from Ireland around the impact of COVID in terms of forced coming out and how it's really created this almost perfect storm for some young people in terms of being really caught into a very difficult family surrounding. So I think those are very important points to name. I will add, given that we do have the two ears of the, well, 4 ears from the European Parliament, I think resources is something that is coming true really very strongly from all reports. Resources both for service providers, but also for LGBTI organizations. And I think it is also understanding the context in which we're working in at the moment if we want to progress the issues. LGBTI organizations, like many civil society organizations, are under considerable strain at the moment because of the conditions. And so it's not lack of interest and desire to work on the issue, but we need to figure out how people are resourced to do this work. So that is another really clear political point that we need to be exploring. I'm checking the Q&A. Am I addressing most? Have we addressed? I'm looking at Robbie. I think we've addressed mostly. Okay. Well, then I think Evin and Kim, I don't know if you had any last comments or roundup comments you wanted to make.
I just actually want to end up with, and maybe it's repeating what was said just a few minutes ago, but the importance of not giving up. One concrete example that I sometimes think about, and the experience that I have had during my short time, once again here in the Parliament, is what happened during the Black Lives Matter demonstrations. we adopted a very progressive report late spring, early summer, as far as I can remember last year. And I promise you that many of the things that was in the report, some of those who voted in favor of it would never have signed on them if not the big demonstrations and mobilization took place. But after demonstrations and mobilization and people making their voice heard, a lot of politicians, I would say from the more right side, not the extreme right, but the other parties, felt pressure on themselves that they need to deliver concrete actions. And that is a concrete example that I just wanted to highlight, where we really made a change with mobilization, organization. And thank you once again from my side for inviting me to this conversation. And I look forward to continue our cooperation.
Yes, thank you so much indeed. And yeah, perhaps the last point I would like to make is, what you just mentioned about how so many different things of your background can intersect and, make you even more vulnerable in our societies. And I think it is a positive thing to more and more see, the term intersectionality being raised, in policy recommendations and strategies. But I think it is really up to us, and I really think you can also count on us to power it, to make sure that the focus of to have an intersectional approach will really become something tangible and will actually mean something. And it's definitely a fight we are also going to take in the coming years.
Well, thank you very much, both of you, for taking time to be with us today. It's really appreciated. But I will not be the one formally closing this. I think we have someone who we're very, very grateful to welcome today. Really grateful that she made time to be with us and to listen in to our conversation. I guess many people in the world would know her as an acclaimed singer artist, but there's also the piece of a great longtime advocate for equality and social justice, and the founder or co-founder of True Colors United. So Cyndi Lauper, it's a really great honor and privilege to have you with us today. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Oh, okay. Yeah, unmute me. That's a good idea. Okay, so I also want to give, accolades to Dr. Jema Shelton and to Gregory Lewis, who has worked with me almost from the beginning, and it was an eye-opener. But what we had to do first, and that's why I'm glad, very glad to have listened to your two Parliament members, because we need to know, or you need to know, because this is what we did. We went to an urban housing thing, because you're talking about low income housing, right? So it's collaboration. So you say, what do we need to do to help move this along? So one of you said mobilization, organization, demonstrations. We went about it differently because of the mentors that I had. I had Kathy Nelson, and Gregory Lewis had worked with Kathy Nelson. Then we got Dr. Jema along, and Jema is came up with some really brilliant stuff, and it's been a great collaboration over the years. But the one thing that you really need is those research. The more knowledge you have, the more concrete information that you have about the issue and how many in proportion as your LGBTQIQ youths experiencing homelessness, what's happening with them, how many we have and still have up to 40%, but it's getting better. We have different programs. We've gone to Washington and we continue as a organization to keep advocating for LGBTQ youth that are experiencing homelessness by preventative work too. So when we went to like the urban housing, it's called HUD, right? We asked, and she told us, the head of HUD told us, oh, you know, you need this, you need information, and you need to collaborate. We collaborated with, and I am never, ever worried about who I'm collaborating with. If I have to get to point B, I got to go through a wall anyway. We all do. So you collaborate. You collaborate with rich individuals who will and care. We even put together a Give a Damn campaign, which actually came out of a tour I did with the LGBT community saying, hey, you're making money off of us. What we did, though, was we had a real inclusive tour, not a fakey one, a real one, with every kind of person that we could get, which to me was like, you know, I love that rainbow tribe thing. And we moved the needle by raising money and awareness, right? So the tour thing, that didn't work out, but what came out of that was the Give a Damn campaign. So then we would talk and say, hey, let's make it sexy to care. Let's make it cool. We got to get straight people and, you know, LGBTQIQ all in together, because in any civil rights movement, and to be clear, this is a civil rights thing, right? Human rights, civil rights. You need everybody on board. You need the people that make it look sexy. You need the rich folks that will shell out, and you need government agencies. What you should focus on first is information. Information is power. You'll know what to do. And if you have this information, like Gregory said, and you bring it forth to the European Parliament, they'll see what it is. It's concrete, it's black and white. It's like all the graphs that they do. You're showing it to them. It's not like you're just saying it. You're showing it. You have proof. You've done research. You've done your work. And then you spend the money. You spend the money on where you see the areas that are needed to spend money. And you communicate with the different organizations, the people who have the boots on the ground. And this is what we did. You know, sometimes you're in a room and you're having a conference, and you meet people like, this organization, they can get beds. This organization, they can get the house, right? They can get the house, but the other guy can't. So you start talking to each other and learn how to do it. The True Colors house that came out of a generational home, you know, this woman, Colleen Jackson, worked with HUD. It's low income housing. So there may already be in place low income housing, right? So you work with those people, and that's how you widen it to include LGBTIQ youth experiencing homelessness. And I mean, we did step by step, and trust me, last administration, yeah, 2 steps back. But this administration, we got back up again. Things are better, right? I mean, we also have educational thing, education, because you're talking to, and I have a friend who talks about tolerance as you tolerate people, but the truth is you're trying to show intolerant people widen their view and make them more tolerant. The only way to do that is to show real data, real stories, and how it affects the people around you. Share your story, share your story, share your story. That's what I was told constantly, constantly. Because the guy that you work next to for 12 hours a day, if that's your day, they're your friends, right? So if you tell them your story, they're going to understand it in a different way. It's more human. You're not preaching at them. You're not doing the cancellation thing, right? The more you cancel, the more you shut the door. You never want to shut the door. You want to keep the door open. I'm going to quote Harvey Fierstein because I go back to human rights in the 70s, right? You change the world when you change people's minds and when you change your own mind. So education, education. Now, Dr. Shelton put together or helped us with the toolkit. We had a toolkit that you could buy, which Covenant House looked at and changed everything about it and was more inclusive for LGBTQ IQ youth experiencing homelessness. That changed because why? Because we had education, because there was a toolkit. Did they ever see the toolkit, guys? Did you send it to them? You must have, right? Okay. So there you go. And I'm not gonna, I know I'm talking too much. I was listening to what you had to say, and yeah, you could demonstrate, but why not go right in there, look at the things that are in place? The one thing that I saw when we first started was one organization in the government didn't talk to the other organization in the government. You got to look at your government and see the whole thing, right? And then you got to see where you could fit in, right? And who you could talk to and who you could collaborate with. That is so important. Share information. And the truth is, then you have a different situation. I mean, America's a big place, and sometimes you can go into a state like Texas and feel like, what country or planet did I just land on? And they look at you the same way. But in Europe, you're also talking a different language. And then you have the Eastern Bloc, which is totally different from the Western Bloc. So what we were told was to come up with a blueprint. If you get a blueprint that works in a small place, taking into in an urban place, in a rural place. For us, it was rural and urban because those are the two different climates, that LGBT youth could come from. But it's a little more complex than what I'm making it. It's kind of simple. But if you can come up with a blueprint that works in the Eastern Bloc, in the Western Bloc, in a rural place, in the city, in an urban, heavily urban place, and have models that actually work that you could start with, that is a big, big thing. Because you have something concrete that you're bringing forward. And again, you got to bring everybody together. You got to go to the rich folks that you'd never talk to, the people who are already doing this, have the boots on the ground, and put everything together. I think what you guys need is more. You have to do more research, because that's what I'm hearing from both you Euro Parliament members, that you don't have enough research. You got to go, maybe fund it through, a private area of philanthropy. There's a lot of them out there. A lot of rich people want to feel better. Go to them and go and see if you can research, go from place to place and talk to the people who have the boots on the ground and get your information, and then make it a report. You really got to do this if you want to go into the parliament and shake things up. Have concrete information, do your research, find out where all the Find out where all the bodies are, you know, and 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 all the parts of parliament and all your little programs or big programs that are already in place. But a lot of times there's a program already in place that could just expand a little, you know? So that's what we did. And I think, I don't know, I've seen a lot of change in America. When we first started, I was on it doing some, doing my punishment. I went on to a TV show thinking I make a lot of money for the organization, and then I was like, what am I doing? But I wasn't even allowed to say LGBTIQ. Well, there's no IQ in the States, they don't do that. But I couldn't say LGBTQ. So I had to wait till we were live. And then when we were live and they couldn't stick a gag over my mouth, I said it. And I talked about human rights. But it's a long way from there now. Now, all of a sudden, it's on the agenda. It's people are aware of it. You know, I think too, Gregory, you could say, I think that the Give a Damn campaign helped us too, helped us kick a wedge in the door because it made it kind of cool. I mean, don't you think, Gregory? Where are you?
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it opened up hearts and minds and got people to pay attention to LGBTIQ issues, particularly youth homelessness, that people just weren't willing to hear about or talk about.
Yeah, so we made it cool. Part of it is like a marketing thing too. It's like it depends on, go find your advocates, all kinds of advocates, straight people, white people, black people, Asian people, every kind of people. You have different situations in Europe. Educate, 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 educate. There's parts of the world where education is not legal and it's a gender thing. And, you start to think about, like we used to say, oh, how many people are going to come out and say, hey, me, I'm different. A lot of people won't do that because they're afraid. And that's the other thing. If you can open up the conversation, if you can present it with information, if you can collaborate and bring people together and government organizations that are in place and bring them together and have them, they don't even talk sometimes, which that was shocking to me. And to do what Dr. Shelton did by making that toolkit, having toolkits for people to read and see, to change people's minds. That's how we're going to change things. And yes, if you want to go and demonstrate, that's fine. But to me, if I could go, like when I used to go with Greg, we used to go to Washington and you'd go to advocate and you'd be standing there and there's a guy next to you. He's there for snowboarding. Okay, he wants to make sure that people can use their electronic machines to plow through everything, right? And I just think, if people could advocate for something like that, then we can advocate for human rights the same way they do and get it. Let's do something positive. We could do this. And that's it. And I know I talked way too much. And I just want to thank you for including us, for, whatever we can share with you, we will. And we are proud to help. We're still fighting a battle over here. But remember, 2 steps forward, sometimes 1 step back, but you get back there again. And community, this is a community thing. Don't forget that. Work small, like you were saying, right? Community by community. you work with the community, and you'll find the solutions, because a lot of times it's within that community. And you can do preventative work too before the youth get thrown out. Sometimes it's not a good situation. Sometimes it's communication. So education, education, education. And the one thing, before I go, Gregory Lewis went out on the road to get the information. But the one thing that he came back with that really struck me, that felt like we can talk to the parents, right? Sometimes if your kid comes out to you and you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this, but this is my kid and I love my kid. If you tell your kid, I love you, you are my kid, but you got to give me a minute to wrap my head around this whole, LGBTQ thing, then sometimes that kid will not run away, okay, out of fear of rejection. And you got to make space for the parents too, because they want to learn. They want to learn. That's another thing, Dr. Shelton, we should make a toolkit for parents, right? That would help. All right. Anyway, so thank you for including us. Thank you for including me. I didn't mean to be long-winded. I was listening to what you guys said. I was going to ask a question of the Euro Parliament members if they see one thing that could be done that could move the needle for them. And I think I heard research. If there's anything else, you guys should find out and do it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Cindy. It wasn't long-winded at all. It was actually quite inspiring and so heartfelt. And if I may add again, our thanks. I think, Freek, you'll allow me to do this on both our organizations. The culture and values of True Colors United of togetherness are definitely what we've been experiencing from the start. So thank you to you and to Gregory and to Gemma and to Anthony and the whole team, because that's what you shared and that is what is helping us move the conversation forward and start the work a bit more concretely here in Europe. So huge thanks. And that is definitely, hopefully, a message that is coming through this event, that there is so much power in bringing our collective experiences and expertise together. I think if ILGA-Europe had done this on our own, and if FEANTSA had done this on their own, it would not be where we're at the moment. So I don't see us moving forward in any other way than in the together. So thanks to everyone on the screen and some who are not on the screen from our respective teams that have been absolutely instrumental in making this happen, and to the many, many participants to today's webinar. And again, last thanks to Kim and to Evin. So all I'll say is thank you and onwards with the work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.